Well, thank you and good morning. Is it afternoon? I've no idea. 20 years. Being in Ukip is like being on a Big Dipper ride, isn't it? Because just at the moment you think it's all going swimmingly, suddenly you crash down to the bottom again. And we've seen this many, many times over the years. But what's interesting electorally is that each successive low has been higher than the previous low. There is that very clear, steady trend, and it was even there in the 1990s, tough and difficult though it was. It's terrific to see people that I've known and worked with for 20 years. I was a very unlikely member of any political party, really. I'd been a member of the Tories because I thought the Thatcher project needed to be tried. But I was busy working in the City of London. And I was never even intending to run for local council. But it just seemed to me there was something going so badly wrong with our entire political class taking us down a track which inevitably, it seemed to me, since Maastricht, would mean the loss of our ability to govern ourselves, that I just felt I got to get involved. And so there I was, involved, and 6 weeks after the party had been formed, I woke to hear the early morning news that the Conservative Member of Parliament for Eastleigh, Stephen Milligan, had died overnight in slightly strange circumstances, but we'll gloss over that. And I thought, well, I've joined this party, in for a penny, in for a pound, I'll volunteer, and so I was actually the first person ever to be adopted by the party as a candidate for Ukip, and I'm actually rather proud of that, I really am. I think David Lott's horsebox and touring Britain endlessly, campaigning for a political party that nobody had ever heard of, is simply one of the most extraordinarily eccentric things I think I'll ever come across in my life, David. I mean, wonderful stuff. My style was a little bit different. And I, from the early days in Ukip, began to think and feel that I wasn't too bad as a speaker. And very happy if we booked the back room of a pub or a village hall, and I would go and speak. And since the party was founded, I've spoken at over 1,000 public meetings. In the early days they were small, now they're 500 and 600 people. But I particularly remember a meeting organised by the late Malcolm Wood, and there was a little village in the Salisbury constituency called Hanging Langford, a beautiful place. And Malcolm organised a public meeting, and he did it all right. He put a leaflet through the door of every house in the village. He put a little advert in the post office. He put a notice up on the parish notice board that Nigel Farage was going to speak on this Saturday afternoon in Hanging Langford. And Malcolm and I turned up, and we waited for the crowds to come. And nobody came. Absolutely nobody came. And we thought, well, there must be something wrong with this. You know, perhaps there's been a big village wedding or, you know, there must be some reason. So 6 months later, we decided, right, let's really make it work this time. So not only did we put leaflets through every door and put an advert in the local post office and put something up on the parish notice board, we also knocked on lots of doors and met people and went into the pub and advertised the fact we were having this meeting. And we felt, well, this time, it's got to work. And you know what? No one turned up. So there have been one or two down moments. A couple of our speakers mentioned that by-election that took place in South Yorkshire in 1998. It did give us hope because it was suddenly credible that we could win seats under the PR system for the European elections, and it helped us to raise money. It didn't help us to gain any media profile. You'd have thought we didn't actually exist. And despite the fact that we were a brand new party, breaking in and winning 3 MEP seats, the election night coverage of the BBC that night, it took them 87 minutes to work out why others were getting such a big share of the vote. I have to say, you know, leading the party in 2009 to coming second across the United Kingdom in the European elections was something I was very proud to be part of. I have to say, the morning of May the 3rd this year, after those results we had in the English county elections, which I have to confess surprised even me how good they were. And that was a wonderful moment. And I think of the by-elections and many things that have happened in Ukip, where I'm proud of what we've been able to do together. But for me, without doubt, the most exciting and the best day of my time in Ukip, and it can never be bettered, was that night in 1999, as David said earlier, when we made the breakthrough, and I found myself having been elected to the European Parliament. And it was an astonishing moment. It really was. David said to me that night, he said, "Nigel, your life is about to change." And boy, he was right. I look back at the photographs of that evening and I see myself with this sort of mop of jet black hair. But I was rather proud of myself because I'd never done any live television interviews before that evening. Done a couple of pre-records, small regional ones, but never done live television. And there I was at 1:30 in the morning, and there's a camera there, and there's an ITV journalist asking me questions live on telly. And it was rather odd, really, to stand there and find myself saying how pleased and proud I was to have been elected to a parliament I condemned under an electoral system I despised. But anyway, the interviewer said, he said, "Well, Nigel, you said you'd do it. Nobody believed you. Congratulations," he said. That's how I knew it wasn't the BBC, by the way. "Congratulations," he said. "I'm sure if we win the general election," Dimble is going to say, "Well, that was a bit of a freak result, wasn't it?" Anyway, he said, "You said you'd do it. Congratulations." He said, "Now, next week," he said, "you'll be off on Eurostar and you'll arrive in your office in Brussels and you'll receive a never-ending round of invitations to breakfasts, lunches, dinners and champagne receptions. Do you think," he said to me, "that you'll be corrupted by the lifestyle?" And I replied live on air, and it's probably still the best answer I've ever given to any interviewer. I said, "No, I've always lived like that." I meant what I said yesterday. We have, over the course of the last 2 years, started to change the face of British politics. And yes, we'll have our ups and downs. And yes, we'll make the odd mistake. And yes, we'll be human. But be in no doubt that our central core message is appealing out there to good, ordinary, decent people in their millions. And they are bright enough to see through some of these stories. They realise that actually UKIP is a decent party that wants good things for all of the people of this country. I genuinely believe that in terms of what we can achieve, we've barely actually started yet. And I want you all to go home from this conference later on today and to commit to getting involved in standing in local elections, to getting involved in getting us ready for the European elections next year. If we can climb over those hurdles clearly on May the 22nd next year, then we will have a very good, serious tilt at the general election. And whatever people say, you know, in the South they'll say, if you vote UKIP, you'll split the vote and you'll let Labour in. And in the North, in the marginals, they'll say, well, if you vote UKIP, you'll split the vote and you'll let the Tories in. But what began to emerge on May the 2nd this year, and what will begin to emerge, particularly in our target seats as 2015 emerges, is that as this party gets bigger and stronger, voting UKIP isn't about whether you get this lot or the other lot. What we showed on May the 2nd was our potential now is to say to the British voters, vote UKIP and you will get UKIP. Thank you.